Welcome to Small 3D Prints. My name is Daniel, and today we will be reviewing the Bondtech INDX upgrade for the Prusa Core One Plus. Disclaimer, this is a Founders Edition index, and it may differ from the retail edition that Prusa is releasing later this year. So far, I'm only aware of a change to the front plate, but there may be more hardware changes as we go along. I have purchased the index and the Prusa Core One with my own money. I have not been sponsored by Prusa or Bondtech. All of the thoughts are my own, but a disclaimer, I have been sponsored by Prusa in the past, but this will not affect my opinions and my review of the index machine. I've had the index for about 3.5 weeks. I've done over 13,000 tool changes with the machine and over 300 hours of printing. And with that background, I want to talk about what are my thoughts about the index and should you get it. So a bit of background about the index. The index is designed and developed by Bondtech, which is a Swedish company, and they are in partnership with Prusa. This is the first partnership of its kind between two major European printing manufacturers, where Bondtech has supplied the extruder and the nozzles, and Prusa has made it work with the software and the firmware and the hardware that already exists. INDX stands for Induction Heating Dual Extrusion. So that's the name that INDX came from. The nozzles are heated by induction, and they will heat up to 220 degrees in about 3 to 5 seconds. Dual extrusion because there are two gears on either side of the filament that lock and will actually move the filament down, which promises great results for TPU. So how much does the index cost? Well, first you have to buy the Core One machine if you don't have one yourself, and you can get it as a kit version where you assemble it yourself. And that kit costs 1,050 euros. You can also get it fully assembled, and that's 300 euros more at 1,350. The index upgrade itself for the 8 tool is 900 euros, and for the 4 tool version, it's 670 euros. Those numbers, of course, are not including shipping, and your regional pricing may vary. Availability. When will you be able to purchase the index? Well, if you are a founder, you should have already received your index and, like me, are probably already using it. If you have instead pre-ordered from Prusa, they have estimated a mid-August shipping for the first units, and that will take a few weeks or perhaps a month to finalize shipping. Later this year, there should be a general availability for the index, and they have also estimated that if you are wanting to install the index on a Core One L, that kit should also be available before the end of the year. What's it like to install the process? I installed my index upgrade in about 7 hours from start to finish. It is slightly more complicated than the MMU3 upgrade and slightly less complicated than if you were building a Core One from a kit. During the kit building process, I realized how much effort Prusa made into making the index work with the Core One. They had to raise the heat bed, they had to change the dimensions, and they had to change this front panel to add rigidity to the structure. And overall, I'm very impressed with how they were able to convert the index, which was an already completed device, to be able to work so flawlessly with the Core One. Saying that, there are a few frustrations. You had to self-tap most of the screws. So for all of the tools here, I had to do 16 by hand manual screws into the plastic, which was honestly quite tiring. And throughout also the machine, most of the screwing was actually self-tapping. I'm not sure if I'm using that correctly. And that was quite a frustrating experience, which comparing to the Prusa kits, I found quite frustrating because the Prusa kits had nuts that you would just slide in, and then the screws, you could just screw into those nuts, where this involved a lot of self-tapping, and that made the process a little bit frustrating. You have to disassemble the entire Core XY mechanism and also remove the heat bed to raise it up. So for some users, that may be a little bit difficult, you may want to wait till later this year when Prusa will be releasing the index already installed on their pre-made Core Ones. I don't think it's that difficult, but that's up for you to decide. Let's talk about the hardware. Now, I can't talk about the hardware unless I talk about the Nozzlegate situation. Bondtech originally said that the tools found in the index system would be hardened. And they specifically said that you could print carbon fiber, glass fiber, and even glow filaments without fear of wear. Unfortunately, already after the devices were delivered, we found out that the nozzles aren't hardened to the industry standards, and that glow filament and carbon fiber filaments will wear through the nozzle at an accelerated rate. Tommy from Prusa said that a nozzle can withstand approximately 3.5 kilograms of carbon fiber filament before it degrades, but only 100 grams of the Prusa Ultra Glow. So if you were purchasing the index with the idea that you'll be able to combine different glow filaments with carbon fiber, unfortunately you can't. Bondtech have released a statement acknowledging that the nozzles are not hardened and that there will be compensation given to customers, but what that compensation is and what it looks like, we don't know. Unfortunately, the wording that they've used in their email seems as if they will only give a percentage discount to people who purchase hardened nozzles later. And for the community as a whole, there's been a lot of outrage at the lack of communication about this topic. Prusa have been on top of their communication. Straight after coming back from open source, Tommy was on Reddit and on Discord talking to the community about this issue. He said that they would liaise with Bondtech to find adequate solutions. He also confirmed that Batch 1 Prusa Retail Edition pre-orders will receive the compensation just like Founders Editions will, and that they will include unspecified additional hardware in their kits as a form of compensation. The stark difference between Prusa communication and Bondtech communication is really evident. And unfortunately, Bondtech have been digging themselves a hole through a lack of open communication in what they're going to do to resolve this issue. While Prusa have always been one step ahead, always ready to inform the community with what they're going to do and how they're going to do it. And Bondtech have invented or have created this incredible technology, which we will go about into detail a little bit later. But they are ruining the trust that the customers have in them by not communicating effectively with their customers. And I wish that Bondtech would just more openly communicate what are their plans on a more regular interval, because the index truly is in some ways a very revolutionary piece of technology. There are two really great pieces of hardware that they have included within the index kit. The first is the Eddy sensor located down here. Instead of tapping the nozzle on a hole in the heat bed or on a screw like in the XL, it uses a eddy current to measure the position of the nozzles and uses that as the nozzle offset calibration. And at the start of every print, it calibrates the nozzle offsets, and so you get perfect layers and perfect calibration every single time. I think that was a really smart decision by Prusa to include that in their index upgrades, because it makes nozzle offset calibration seamless and you really don't have to do any intervention to be able to get those nozzle calibrations done. The second piece that I want to talk about is the off-bed priming. Now, while you may have seen that some people have had bad results, and honestly, so have I. My first ever print with the off-bed priming was really bad. But Prusa upgraded the firmware and their filament profiles, and I've been getting consistently good results with the off-bed priming. Unfortunately, the calibration for the nozzle wiper is really difficult, because the nozzle wiper calibration involves putting the nozzle directly in the middle of the V-groove. And unfortunately, there's not much visibility, even with the top hat lifted up, to be able to see exactly where that central groove is. The hint that I have used to help is to get a little small Allen key and to simply put that Allen key in the nozzle wiper in the place that it should go. Then when you move the head to the position it needs to be, you'll be able to feel that the nozzle is tapping on that Allen key, and you will know that that is the right position that it needs to be in. So that is a little tip that I've used to be able to get my nozzle wiper calibration perfect. For me, off-bed purging is incredible. Not only can you finally mix different materials like PLA and PETG, but you also regain some bed space that would be reserved for the prime or the purge tower. Now, that may not be a big percentage of the bed for small prints, but for tall prints, the purge tower or the prime tower has to have an incredibly large base to be able to support the weight of all the filament above it and to prevent it from being knocked over. This resolves that problem completely if you use the complete individual objects button in Prusa Slicer. It allows you to print two objects, one with a variable layer height and the other one without, which would be impossible if you would have a prime tower instead of off-bed priming. That allows you to put multiple different objects on your print bed. And I think that that flexibility is something that isn't being talked about enough, because every printer that I've seen, every commercial printer that I've seen does not have off-bed priming. And I believe that we will see a lot of Prusa's competitors soon implementing a similar system, because I truly believe that off-bed priming is the future for multicolor 3D printers. Let's talk about reliability. In 13,875 tool changes, the index has failed to pick up a tool once. I'm not sure what happened because I wasn't at home, but all I know is I got a notification on my phone that the tool pickup has failed. That was during the early firmware, and since then I've done about another 8,000, 9,000 tool changes without a single fail. So the tool pickup and put down is really reliable. Let's talk a little bit also about print quality. So as I mentioned before, the early firmware and the early profiles produced some pretty bad results. But within a week of the Founders Edition getting into the hands of people, Prusa released an update for their firmware and also for their profiles. And honestly, the results were significantly better. This is a frog I printed with the updated firmware. And while there is a little bit of stringing and some print defects around the eye, honestly, that can easily just be removed. As you see, I've just removed that. And you have a pretty good print. But it's just been getting better and better. Just last night, I printed another frog. And honestly, there is just one little print defect here at the eye, and the rest of it is honestly perfect. The overhang performance is good, the quality of the print is good, the offset of the different colors is perfect thanks to the Eddy sensor. And honestly, I would say that now Prusa's default profiles and firmware is good for 99% of users. The index has a print quality similar to the Prusa Nextruder. It has slightly worse overhang performance, but the print quality is pretty good. And honestly, I didn't notice a significant difference from the Nextruder itself. In terms of print speed, the index is a beast. It is over twice the speed of a Prusa XL. It is 50% faster than a Snapmaker U1, and it has print speeds on par with the H2C, with significantly faster tool changes than the H2C does, resulting in much faster prints. So I have here some examples of some 3D prints. We have the gear, the 8-color gear, and honestly, everything moves perfectly fine. There is a little bit of stringing around the edges, but this was on the second firmware and not the most up-to-date firmware. I also printed the torture toaster, and everything seems to be working. The bread goes up, the sides open, the gears close. These little tolerance tests open and go up as they should be. And you can see here what I was talking about with the tolerance. So mine extruder could quite comfortably handle 75-degree overhangs, but the Index can handle from about 60 to 70-degree overhangs without having significant degradation in print quality. I also printed some flexi toys. This is from the Patreon designer In Place, and honestly, it printed absolutely perfectly. No stringing, no overhang problems, and honestly, it's quite strong in terms of the actual locking mechanisms itself. I would also like to show you an example of the print quality between the older firmware and profiles and the newer one. As you can see on this benchy here, there were some color breakthrough at the front of the benchy, and the overhang performance was pretty bad. Overall, I wouldn't be able to use this, but very soon after, the new firmware resulted in a benchy that was printed almost perfectly. There was a tiny bit of stringing here and one little piece of filament overhang, but overall this is very usable, and with just 10 to 20 seconds of cleaning, this would be a perfect benchy. Let me show you how fast the tool changes are on the Index. So let's talk about some positives and some negatives about the Prusa Bondtech collaboration with the Index on the Prusa Core One. The first is it's fast. If you're coming from a Prusa Core One or a Prusa XL, you will feel the speed improvement immediately when you put something to print. Even coming from a Snapmaker or a Flash Forge, you will notice that the Prusa is printing approximately 50% faster. The possibility for 8 colors. Both the Flash Forge and the Snapmaker only have 4 colors as the option. The Prusa XL has 5. The H2C has 7 different options. And the Prusa Core One Index has up to 8. This is the highest amount in class. 8 different colors. And it allows you to have CMYK and RGB all together on one machine. So you can print any color using the new color mix, or as is better known, full spectrum printing. I have my own thoughts about full spectrum and the advantages and disadvantages of that, which I will cover in another video, but I just want to mention that 8 tools really is the magic number when it comes to printing. And finally, the new technology. With the Eddy sensor for nozzle calibration and the off-bed priming, I think that these new technologies significantly help people who want to do multi-material or multicolor prints, because it really removes some of the big problems that exist with current multi-tool changer systems. Now let's talk about some of the cons. For people who don't have a Prusa, it can be expensive. If you want the kit version of the Prusa Core One plus the kit version of the Bondtech Index, it's still going to cost you about 1,950 euros before shipping. For a build plate size of 248 millimeters by 205 millimeters by 270 millimeters, for some people, that's just not enough space for that price. Another negative is that Index is built and designed by Bondtech. For some people, due to the recent scandals with Nozzlegate, along with their constant delays and the way that some of their PR managers have been treating customers in Discord, this is a red flag. Do I think that that means you shouldn't buy the index? No, especially if you're buying it from Prusa, you will only deal with Prusa. And Prusa have incredible customer service who are always ready to help you. But I know for some people, the recent Bondtech controversy has led them to cancel their orders. Replacement parts can be expensive. If you get a blob of death on your index printer, you will have to change the entire board, which, according to some founders, has cost them between 80 to 90 euros, not including shipping. Considering an entire U1 toolhead is about 60 euros, those replacement parts can be quite expensive. Not only that, but Bondtech have increased the price of their nozzles. I paid just under 37 euros per nozzle for the additional nozzles I ordered as a founder. But now, if you wish to purchase a nozzle, you're paying just short of 50 euros. And combining that with the fact that these nozzles are not properly hardened and cannot deal with carbon fiber, glass fiber, or glow filaments, this has led some people to really ask the question about, did Bondtech overpromise and underdeliver? In conclusion, if you own a Prusa Core 1 or a Prusa Core 1L, you should buy the index system as soon as it becomes available. If you want a printer that is manufactured in the West, so in Europe or America, Prusa with the index truly is the best option that you have. And honestly, it's a great printer. It prints fast, it prints well, and it has technologies that other printers simply do not have on the consumer market. If you're looking for the best bang for your buck, this might not be the machine for you. There are competitors which are significantly cheaper, but you will be compromising something, whether that's print speed, whether that's only 4 nozzles, or whether that's build quality of the printer itself, which is a little bit subpar. There will be compromises that you'll be making. But if you are looking for the best bang for your buck, then I'm not sure if this is the printer for you. There's one thing I know for certain. Prusa will be continuing to develop the index and will be continuing to release better firmware and better profiles for the index itself. The index hasn't been out for more than a month, and we've already received significant major updates to the firmware and to the profiles, which have led to the user experience of this machine being significantly better. The next firmware that Prusa releases will even automate part of the nozzle wiper calibration. So another pain point that will be removed by Prusa. Thank you for watching. I will continue to talk about the index, any improvements or updates on the machine, and I have plans to review both the Snapmaker U1 and the Prusa Core 1L. So if you're interested, please subscribe down below. If you found this video useful, please leave a like and a comment to let me know what I should do next. Thanks for watching. See you next time.